Now, I'm pleased to say my guest is the former Australian ambassador to Washington, should I say, and former Australian Treasurer Joe Hockey, who joins me from New York. Joe Hockey, so good to see you. I'm going to ask you a very difficult question first up here, Joe Hockey. Who's going to win?
Everyone asks it, Andrew, and I don't have any greater insight than the thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people that are watching polls and speaking to higher-ranking officials in the Republicans and the Democrats. And, you know, we've got to ask, why is this such a difficult election to call? And it comes down to this, that in the United States, with voluntary voting, as opposed to the compulsory voting we have in Australia, pollsters need to ask a number of questions rather than just one. In Australia, you say, are you voting for a Liberal government or a Labor government? Pretty simple, because we all know everyone has to go out and vote. But here, you're trying to work out whether they are actually going to turn up and vote, and also, importantly, whether they're going to follow the ticket. And then if they are they going to vote for Trump or Harris? It's now impossible to determine that because we just don't know what percentage of eligible Americans are going to the polls. And importantly, what we do know is that both Trump and Harris are focused on new first-time voters rather than trying to swing voters from the other tribe.
There have been a couple of own goals in the last week of the campaign. This Harris supporter, Mark Cuban, saying women around Donald Trump are dumb. Joe Biden lashing Trump supporters, saying he'd smack Donald Trump on the backside. Donald Trump saying Liz Cheney should have guns trained on her. Will any of these incidents make any difference?
I'm not sure they will. I think everyone that is going to vote for or against Trump has already baked in their views of Donald Trump. I don't think you could say or do anything involving Donald Trump that would surprise people or at the last minute change their votes. I think the issue is Kamala Harris remains undefined. Her entire campaign is focused on not being Donald Trump. She is now attempting to get into more prosecution of her economic policies, but in my view, it's too late. She has spent a lot of time unifying the Democrats, and she has built an incredible coalition that stretches from Bernie Sanders on the left to Liz Cheney on the right. Now, you would appreciate how broad that coalition is. It's basically the full spectrum of American politics. But on the other hand, Donald Trump has built a coalition that stretches from Elon Musk to the head of the Teamsters truck driving union. In fact, 70% of the members of the Teamsters voted in an internal poll to support Trump over Harris. So when you see those vast, broad coalitions, the one issue that divides them is Donald Trump himself. And really, at the end of the day, we don't know how many committed people are going in to vote either for or against Donald Trump.
Well, plenty of people have written that Trump is unstable, that he's dangerous. He hasn't got a Mike Pence in the background now or others to attempt to placate some of his demands, is the perception. If he wins, are you concerned about him holding it together?
No. I think Donald Trump 2.0 won't be much different to Donald Trump 1.0. From a policy perspective, I think it'll be pretty similar. Whereas I think, you know, Kamala Harris will be working hard to ensure that she is not a second term of the Biden presidency. And the difference between Trump being elected and Harris being elected is Harris would be focused almost immediately on her second term. Whereas, as you know, Donald Trump can't run another term. So they will be vastly different presidencies. And in both cases, they need to get the approval of the Senate for their cabinet. And even though the Republicans are likely to control the Senate, under Donald Trump, he will need to have sensible people around him in order to get them through that vetting process.
Well, on the other side of the coin, Kamala Harris is seen as pretty unimpressive, pretty average, not a great candidate. John Howard has actually said that in Australia, neither of them would have made it up to the plate. What do you make of that?
Well, we've got a very, very high standard for political leadership in Australia. And I agree with John Howard. It's very hard to get up to the top of the tree in Australia. And look, we are blessed with a whole lot of things in Australia. I think that our parliamentary system is a better system than what occurs here in Washington, DC. And second, thank God for compulsory voting, because it takes the extremism out of it. I mean, you know, all the rhetoric that you referred to a little bit earlier is about firing people up to go out and vote in what could be harsh weather, standing in long queues. It really comes down to how determined people are and enthusiastic they are in backing their candidate. Now, in Australia, we know people have to go out and vote. So whether they like it or not, we've got the opportunity, we've got a 50% chance of winning them over in one form or another. So our democracy works better than the US, but this election is, I think, the truest form of democracy we've probably seen anywhere in the world. I mean, the numbers going to vote and the active participation and diversity of the coalitions that each candidate has built is truly extraordinary, Andrew, really extraordinary stuff.